Welcome back, everyone. I know it's been a minute. This is Dr. Walt, your favorite host of Grace for Grieving. I always bring you the best and the brightest, and today won't be any different. We are privileged to have one of the most dynamic speakers, authors, trainers, and podcast hosts on the East Coast. She is coming to us from Virginia, none other than Dr. A.B. Brehon. So without further ado, I'd like you just to introduce yourself and tell us briefly a little bit about your background, and then we will jump right in to the question that we have for today's topic.
God bless you, sir. It's just a pleasure to be here. I am Barbara Arlene Fields Brehon, Barbara A.F. Brehon, and I am just pleased to be here today with you. It's just a privilege to not be ashamed of who you are and where you come from, and to be able to just speak to people about what it is that they need to know to make their relationship with God better, to make their life here on earth more peaceful, even in the midst of all the crazy stuff that goes on in the world.
Nice. So I want to only address one question for this episode. Like we discussed, we're going to go right into another episode. But for this episode, what I really want people to hear about, especially we're recording in December, and a lot of times people are experiencing depression and anxiety and grief of missing a loved one during this time. So with your background, with a doctorate in theology and decades of experience helping people, can you give us your insight into the whole seasonal grief phenomenon?
Well, I have a lot that I can say. I will begin with the whole idea that here we are in the middle of December, and I'll be transparent from the beginning that this is dear to my heart because my mother transitioned to eternity December 17th, 2001. And every season that I enter into is a reminder of that time. I remember my journey from where it was to where it is. And as I work with or minister with, escort others, whichever term fits where it is that you are listening, it helps me to understand that I understand from the personal. And so when it comes to the Odyssey in the context of trauma and grief, I use trauma here because the whole idea of losing a loved one during the holidays is traumatic. The person who has transitioned into eternity may even have been ill for a long time, may even have been in hospice care for months. Yet, when it occurs, it's traumatic. It really did happen. They really are gone. And then there are those stages of grief that people have to go through. And when they're talking with someone like myself, and they understand that I understand it in the personal sense, it's effective and very helpful for them. So I tend to encourage people to do personal and spiritual growth because here we're talking about sacred space. We're talking about a place where a person is no longer in one spiritual realm, they are in another spiritual realm. And to be able to escort people from a place of hurt and pain and void, emptiness, to a place of acceptance and peace, you're not going to necessarily get over. So I don't use terms like that. It's a matter of moving through the pain to get to whatever is next. So I was intrigued at the idea of talking about this at this season in the midst of it, because I know where I sit. And I know you didn't even know that, Walt, until I just mentioned it a few seconds ago. So today I found myself willing to go into details and willing to go with dealing with the situation to help people understand to do this better, whatever better is for you. That's not the same for everybody.
Yeah.
But one thing everybody needs is a support system. That support system could be an individual within or outside of the family. Because whatever family is, it's different for different people. It could be your church family. It could be your workplace family. Those you work with all day, every day, several days a week become like family. Could be your community where you live. It could be your biological. It could be people that you've adopted through life as your surrogate brothers and sisters and parents. It doesn't matter what the system is. It matters that there is a system where you don't go through it by yourself. You have to make that choice to allow someone to enter into that sacred space that you have inside your heart and let them help you. And help is being able to express what you're dealing with, being able to express how you're feeling, or simply to call and talk about anything but, because your partner in this situation understands that you just need to do something other than talk about that. That trusted individual is able to help you fill the void. That trusted individual or group, support group, would help you confront the trauma. It will help you confront the grief and move you into caring, move you into even helping your loved ones with theirs, because the person that is deceased is related to others in the family, but each person has a different relationship to the deceased. And so the stages of grief and the processes of embracing all of this with grace is the ability to understand that everybody is different. So in simple words, we're not trying to vindicate what God did. We're not trying to explain his purpose or his method and why now. But on the personal side of me getting into that point, I would rather, if it had to happen all over again with my mother and I, that it be the way it was, because God allowed me into her sacred space as she transitioned. I was her caregiver. I moved out of where I lived into her home so she wouldn't have to. She would be around familiar things. And for 3.5 years, I lived there doing whatever. I would have it the same way because she experienced peace among family and friends. I would do it the same way because I know that had she continued to live beyond that time, she would have continued to suffer. So I miss her. So I'm saying all of this in a personal, transparent way because I'm thinking that my story, my testimony will be helpful to someone listening, and I may never know who that is, and that doesn't matter. If they were still here with you, what state of life, what quality of life would they be living with? So I look at what God rescued her from. I miss, I feel, that's me. But when I reflect on what she had to go through, I would rather know she's at peace.
Wow. Um, we could make a series out of that. Thank you for that insightful, authentic impartation of wisdom. So you said so much. I should have written some notes down, but one of the points you made was um, you encourage survivors to go through the grief, not try to run around it, not try to hide from it, like our natural response would be to anything that hurts. So you're saying it's more therapeutic to actually face it with some help.
Yes.
Is that do I understand that correctly?
You are understanding me very correctly. As I work with people, and as I said, it's been 2021, 2001 when my mother passed away.
Mm,
And here we're talking many years later, and I can still talk about it as though it happened yesterday.
sure.
But I can do that without tearing up because God gave me a squad of people that I could depend on to be there for me. And initially, I did not want to. I did not want to be with anybody, including relatives. My folks did not want me to stay in the house after she passed. You need to be with other people. You don't need to be by yourself. I thought I needed to be by myself. A cousin invited me to Christmas dinner, and I told her I'll think about it. And then after thinking about it and saying, I really don't want to do this, but I don't want them to worry about me. You see, I'm making excuses and rationalizing. I'm grieving, right? From the 17th to the 25th, that's not that far apart. So I'm rationalizing, but when I did sit at that table and have fellowship with biological family during this difficult time, I saw God at work helping me through something that I confronted because I said yes, so they would worry about me. And God said, you see, you need them. You need to keep letting people in. So when people ask you, invite you, let them in.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
And that's hard to do because I
That
wanted to be by myself. I didn't want to be bothered with anybody
accept help. I'll repeat it
except,
again, just in case people were preoccupied, distracted. When you're dealing with one of the most challenging uh, situations that you have to deal with in life, and that is uh, coming to grips with having lost someone you dearly love, accept help.
yes,
Especially here in this Western society, individualism is promoted, and machoism and being a boss and all that. But when the time is right, accept help. And let me add one caveat to that: accept qualified help.
yes,
Not necessarily everyone has to have a doctorate, like my esteemed guest, but some people mean they have good intentions, but they just put their foot in their mouths and agitate your hurt even more. So you wanted to avoid people with good reason. Everyone is not the right person to impart in your life during such a tragic time. And as you eloquently said, this is a sacred space,
yes,
and so you have to have some discernment and wisdom about who you allow into this sacred space to help you. But indeed, please accept help. Now, you said so many powerful things. I'm going to and just encourage the audience to rewind this and go back and listen to this again, watch it again. And at the end, I'll give you a chance to tell us how our audience can get in contact with you. Get in contact with Dr. Brehon and find out, read some more of her books, her content. Maybe you need to have counseling or coaching with her. But as she said, accept help. Right now, the Grace for Grieving podcast, where we are right now, is a safe place
Yes.
for people to process that grief. This may be the only chance some people get if they are a guest on my show. Unfortunately, in our society, especially in our community, we address grief in a couple days. We cook a bunch of food, have a party, then we expect you to miraculously recover and get back to business as usual the next week. As you said, it's been 20 years and you still are impacted by your loss. You've healed.
Yes.
You're still healing, but it's not an instant thing, but it's something that we do have to face head on with qualified help.
Yes.
Can you add some more to that as we wrap this episode up? And before I ask you to tell the audience how they can follow up with you.
The bottom line is you're not in it alone. God created us to be in fellowship, in community with other people. So when difficult times come, we're not expected to be in it by ourselves. But there are people that you trust right around you who are waiting for you to call upon them. They respect you enough, they love you enough that they're not pushing themselves on you. You'll know who they are when you quietly ask yourself, Lord, who do you want me to talk to about this? And each time you need to express yourself, it may not be the same person. So be aware of your spirit. Be aware of yourself and discuss with whomever the Lord puts in place for that time, knowing that it may not be the same person each time. I think that's key.
Excellent. Thank you for those nuggets of wisdom. I think that's enough for this episode. I think that's enough for people to meditate on for quite some time. If they don't read any other books or access any other resources, I think if they really go back and digest what you have eloquently given us right now, I think it will be impactful. So as we wrap up this episode, tell the people what kind of projects you have coming up. I know you mentioned a podcast. I know a new podcast. You're doing a lot of things. What are you doing, and how can the people catch up with you?
Well, my. I have recently, earlier this year, published a book called, I was getting ready to say Unbox. I'll get to that in a minute. Bloom, Lord have mercy. I'm so excited about being here. The book is called Blooming for Christ, and it's about developing godly intimacy. That book, Blooming for Christ, can be purchased on Amazon.com on my Amazon page. I have a podcast that we're working to develop for Favored by the Father Ministries that will be coming up hopefully in the new year, called Unboxed. It will be available hopefully on my website. My website is favoredbythefatherministries.com. You can also download my app. There's a ministry app, Favored by the Father Ministries.com. And so if you go in any app store and put in Favored by the Father Ministries, you will see a plethora of things that you can get into. I'm all over social media. You can Google my name, Barbara Brehon, Barbara Brehon, Barbara Brehon, and there are several places where you can follow me on social media.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I am honored that you are here. And people, as I always say, I only bring you the best and the brightest. So you have heard from Dr. Barbara Brehon, and I will have the links to all of her connections and resources in the description of every video and podcast. So until we meet again, always know that where there's hope, there's healing.